pay some bills.
You never know.
Thank you guys for coming.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Hey, you know, I'm surprised you have paid parking out there.
I know, right? You
Why not?
should, because it's at a premium.
You know,
No, I think
I see it, budget
There
change.
you go.
Sitting the whole time. You can be on that, there's an SU9 spot on that committee now.
Is there?
Yes. Call Nancy, we can do it.
Who's, nobody's on it?
Tim Sorgi was, he didn't want to do it anymore for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But if you sit there and vote for no parking, call Nancy, just hop on at the end, sit there, you can, there's an SU9 spot on the budget committee, correct?
It's on the, not the Conway Budget Committee. I mean, it's, now, there's a SAU 9 representative on the Conway School Board Budget Committee.
Oh.
So it's not the common
It's not
budget.
a common
Yeah.
budget.
No.
That doesn't make sense, yeah. But I do like the idea of going forward tomorrow, put out a petition to have a representative from each area.
Here's the problem,
I'm sure there's a problem.
well, no, you mean changing the government.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have to change the government back to what it was, and then people will vote on that.
I think it's to explore.
But why takes time to explore? Our planning board had a petition about changing STRs to commercial use only.
Yeah.
If that was a period last year, they would have had that in place. They said to have the planning board explore through a zoning amendment. We're not
Yeah.
doing that. So if you say it, do it, voters vote on it, get it done.
Yeah.
Everyone's wasting time. Spin.
Yeah. It's just, the whole thing is disheartening.
Yeah.
And I mean, just to see, you're not taking me, right? Just to see
No.
Andrew with the presentation, like, if I had tried to do that with $5 from the school board budget, the way that he had presented and the information and the resources he put behind it, never. I would have been embarrassed to get
No
out.
plan.
Embarrassed.
You got hung out to dry.
But not really, nobody said that. Nobody came in the paper, there was nothing that said, you got one out. There's nothing that said that, nobody was like, oh, that was a good job, that was a good job. I'm like, it was not a good job.
Yeah, dancing on the street it was.
It was, like, I assume we're projecting, I'm like, there's no study, there's nothing.
You
I'm
do realize
embarrassed for him.
people in Conway Village vote for all the town officers being Conway.
Excuse me, did you have a cut?
It's true, look at all someone from Conway Village.
Well, that's part of the problem, it's all
Yeah.
Conway.
Just
Yeah,
That's the way it
as
goes.
opposed to North Conway or other
Well, the
areas.
supervisor checklist down there mentioned, the
Yeah.
vote, it's like 6,800 people not voting, so it's coming down some, but he said
Yeah.
they should break the town in half, and then you have
Right,
I think it.
that simple.
yeah, I mean, there's different needs for the, different, for Conway versus
I'm
North
doing
Conway.
best.
Anyway, we have a
Right.
I decided,
My
my
meeting
meeting
is
is off, so. And Keith, yeah, so. All right, well, it's 4:30, call the meeting to order, and thank you for coming, so. This is it? This is it? How you doing? So Hank's rolling. So, we started out with a pretty good-sized committee. Divided up tasks, and we decided that we would look at 4 high schools, and I think, I shared some information with Scott, I know Jen's had conversations, Jessica Della Valle was very active in the committee, and unfortunately she had some personal things go on in November, and we had a meeting on the 21st of November here for the committee, and at that meeting it became apparent that we had some differences of opinion on how we were doing the research, what was the best way to go forward, what information the board thought they were going to get from us, and what the committee thought they were tasked to do. So at that point, we took a step back, and at the same time, there were some instances of tragedy here in the area. So it seemed fruitful to just kind of pause. We did not have a December meeting. And in late December, it was the 27th, and in January, we were going to have Malcolm Badger, a young guy, have a bunch of kids come in from college and just talk about their experience, about going to high school and in my personal opinion, I could never ask a group of young 20-something-year-olds to gather together for pizza in the environment that seemed to be present here, having had those tragedies so fresh in their minds. So it didn't seem prudent to do that, especially with the holidays. So we paused. In the meantime, Jessica appeared at the board meeting in December. She asked for clarification on the mission of the committee, and the board had given that. And within a day or so, she decided that she needed, for personal reasons, to resign from the committee. So she has done that. That left us with Keith Bradley, who was new to the committee, because when Kate Fournier resigned from the school board, she resigned from the committee as well. So Keith was with our committee for about 2 months and was commissioned to look at Kennett High School. And so we had a matrix of each person that was assigned. At that point, we had 2 people on a school and we were overlapping the information. So Keith has had to resign because he has issues in his family. And then we were left with Erica, myself, Sasha Tracy, and James Glazer. Sasha Tracy is traveling, and she's given us some information that we find that we can use going forward to clarify some of the points that were questioned in November. But she's going to be traveling and unavailable. So she basically is going to be there in distance as a consultant to us. And then just recently this afternoon, James Glazer has decided to step away from the committee. So that leaves Erica and myself as official members and Sasha of the committee. And Malcolm Badger was kind of just being a consultant. He had never attended any meetings. He was just going to be our kind of liaison to young peoples, if you will. So Jen has been helpful in, speaking to some people from Bartlett, and so that's kind of the background of where we stand, and that's why you see so few people. Our committee has really, over the months dwindled down. So basically we took this matrix and we're filling in different areas to look at. The academics of the schools. James Glazer was looking at the athletics of Freiburg and Kennett. You were looking at Robert Frost. I looked at Freiburg Academy, and Sasha was looking at Gorham High School. So we took those 4. And then the question came up is, what kind of information are we using? Are we all utilizing a person at the school, like the superintendent or the director of the school in the case of Robert Frost, or whoever's in charge? Or are we gaining our information from looking things up by Google? So Sasha was going to become our expert in research, and she suggested that we decide on a formal way and that we all use that system. So I noted your annotation that you had referred to someone that you had spoken to or whatever with Robert Frost. So that's kind of where we are. We've got some data on 3 schools, and we have a weakness on Kennett. Right at this point in time, we haven't gotten any information back from Keith, but I have the school report. I went on there today, that school report card. However, that is now 2 years old, so
Last year.
But we can, kind of take that information. We also discussed as a group vouchers, which is something we've not touched at all, to do any kind of research. But let me go back to the essential question. So the committee's focus is, what is the best option for Jackson students for high school? And they'll present their findings to the entire school board for review. So the committee's understanding is that they'll, in May 15th, give their recommendations on their research to the board, and then the board will then take the information and then go ahead and research it more and make those financial decisions. We would not be considering the financial implications other than, maybe the understanding the cost of a bus to Freiburg would be more costly than it would be to go to Kennett, let's say, or that kind of thing. So generally, we wouldn't be touching the financial piece as much. as would be letting the board then take the information about what we saw as the best option. That kind of summarizes where, we've been.
Nice to see.
And
Good.
where are we going? We've tossed around the idea of whether or not we need to meet with, have a listening post within the town. So Sasha's point is, who are we listening to? What is our focus? What information are we gathering? To what point to take the time to do that? So we haven't really talked about that as a committee. So I'm just going by basically, I had sent her some questions that I wanted her to look at for me, just to kind of consider, what we should be looking at, and she made a response to that.
I have it here. I think we could ask at this point, I think we've gotten an overview of where you've come from and stuff. And then, 5-6 weeks ago, I reached out to Nancy to see if we could combine forces for the data collection portion of it. Since we're all pretty much collecting the same data, it doesn't make sense. With our small committee, you guys probably have a small committee, I don't know, just to get the data, the bullet points filled out, and then you can take your data, we'll take our, same data back to the boards to say, here's what we found. So just trying to be more efficient with our time is what we're trying to do. And I know we can all work together at that point. So that's where we are. Where are you guys? What's your
So I've got a
history?
question, I guess. Has anybody actually reached out to any of these schools to see if they'd be willing and
Mhm.
able to accommodate?
Yes, I mean, we have a couple.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, and I've had a conversation with the admissions person that now just got promoted to the director of it, since I spoke to him, and definitely they were receptive. Obviously Kent would take.
Well, we have a nice candidate.
Kenneth? No, well, we figure.
Yes, I was just, in regards to Robert Frost, I think that they're trying to grow their school, so that's kind of a unique situation. It's very different from Gorham, kind of private academy. They have, it's their first year offering 9 through 12, so they have, I believe, 6 students enrolled this year, so it's just the very beginning. But these, on their website,
Did you actually speak to them in person?
yeah, I spoke to
Oh.
the director of the school.
I reached out and had crickets, so
Oh, really?
I mentioned that
Yeah.
you guys have been talking to him, and I want to talk to him, that was 3 months ago.
Well, this is why if we're together, there's
Yeah,
no
so
need for
she-
2
yeah.
people to talk,
Well, it didn't just,
Right.
hello, what's up, would you not, or?
Well, they're probably getting calls from every town, right? So,
I
mean, if the towns are doing due diligence, they're getting a call from each town.
The timing of when I reached out was probably fortuitous because she's the person who answered the phone, and I think she was manning the phones that day, and so we had our conversation right then spontaneously. So I just happened to get her on the first try. But on their website, they were very welcoming of new students, and also just acknowledge the fact that all of the surrounding towns are in this process. And so I think they are aware, and they are, I think, ready to talk, when the time is appropriate with the school boards about that. I think they would be.
So yeah, that's the basic first questions.
Did anybody reach out to Gorham as soon as speak?
Well, Sasha did, and then she had a note on the matrix, something about, she was waiting for them to answer something, but I didn't get the impression that it was negative at all.
Is that David? Was it?
The day back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's very, I can call him, and he's very nice, from the ski days, I used to communicate with him.
She had a call into this is a question for the Board of Trustees. But they seemed, so one thing I heard through just, Jessica and I had met informally with members of the community that had approached her, and then, we went and had coffee a couple times with different people. One of the people said that there's some consideration, and I don't know the truth of it, of combining Gorham and Berlin at some point because of the size.
They have some cooperative agreements like it, and that's happening more and more the further north you get. I don't know, because Gorham is a cooperative district, so I don't think they would combine, but I think they would partner. So, for example, Gorham students go to Berlin for their career tech courses.
Right.
They participate in sports, and some, like hockey is a cooperative team, Gorham Berlin. So I don't know as they would necessarily
Merge the two.
build a cooperative district up there. I think partner is what they will continue to do.
So where are you guys in the process?
So we're still kind of waiting for our strategic plan to get squared away.
Okay,
I've reached out to some people, so we're kind of in a holding pattern. I think the way I look at this is that all these things out there start chopping off one by one. For example, how many kids do you have in high school? 20, 25?
26, I think.
26.
I counted 26 on when you send that attendance.
Yeah.
When you send that attendance
got
thing,
that.
I think I counted 26.
So we have 7. Could we go to Gorham? No. Could you guys go to Gorham? Yes. Could you go to Freiburg? Yes. No matter what Bartlett Jackson does, financially, we would not be spending any more money because we're paying 30 grand a kid roughly right now. So that's financially, I think you just put that aside and it'd be savings, and that's obviously not the point of having these conversations.
Right, we're not worried about the
No,
finances at this point.
that's off the table. So
That's not this charter
Yeah,
committee.
we're not gonna.
Cool, that's not. And then we have, what percentage of your kids would go to, let's say, Conway, if we change it? I mean, are you looking to potentially have everyone go to Freiburg, or?
Yeah, so that would be, like, we would pick a school, we're not gonna say you can just go everywhere.
So your school record would change from Kent to Freiburg,
Correct.
as opposed to maybe Bartlett still have Kent as a school record, and I would guess, what do you think, 25% of the kids in Bartlett would definitely go to Kent for career tech or more? Just,
Because that's gonna change, that's based on the student and the year, you know, what's up, so you can't.
right, but they're a regional vote tech center, so no matter
Right.
what, you have the ability to go.
Yeah, I know, we're just looking to see like what high school would Jackson say they're sending their kids to school,
Yeah.
like, period. Like, we send our kids to school to Kennett, but there's a good amount of them that aren't going to Kennett.
Mhm.
But that's our town that we send to, that's who we pay at this point. So that's what we're looking for, is like investigating that answer.
So you do have parents in Jackson not sending their kids to Kennett and paying out of their pocket to go other places.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
And
that's not our concern,
Cool.
right,
But,
for this committee.
yeah.
Yeah.
however, the other day, it was brought to my attention that there's a group in Jackson that are quite interested in, whether you call it the voucher, free choice, whatever, they really feel that.
Well, we should understand that, and
Right.
Jessica said she would help us with that, 'cause she's really good with that.
Who's
Jessica.
So Kevin, the voucher system has to be through the state, correct?
It's what's called the Educational Freedom Accounts, that right now. And there are certain parameters, so there is a dollar amount that you have to, in order to qualify for.
And it isn't high. I mean, it's or low, whatever you want to say.
Yeah,
It's
3
weird.
times the poverty rate or whatever, and they're still talking about expanding that. But you can take that money and then you can put it towards whatever school that you want to.
But any individual can do that.
Yes, correct.
So as far as the committee looking at voucher systems, that's probably a moot point, correct?
But we want to be able, so our point is, and the reason why we reached out to the community as opposed to just doing it on the school board, is we wanted the community involvement so that when we came time to make a decision, the community was more involved. We weren't starting from scratch educating everybody. So the listening posts are really an educational forum to the community for what we've learned, as opposed to listening to them. We're kind of going back and saying, here's how we got here, this is what happened 20 years ago, because a lot of people, didn't live here, what happened, why are we doing this? I don't even understand, like, I've never been in a community that has a vote on their high school, right? Like, so why are we doing this? What are our options? Here's all your options, here's your data, we have a spreadsheet that's magnificently done with questions, it's a whole, you just fill in the boxes and say, put it out to the community, and then we'll say, and this is what we see as our best options, you know? And then the school board would come in and say, okay, you know, then we'd ferret out if there's a disparity, like, oh, we wanna go to Freiburg versus Kennett, okay, now what are the costs? Now we get into the cost, we're not gonna figure out the cost of each one.
Right, right.
Right, so, and now vouchers are new, they weren't around 20 years ago. So explaining what the voucher system is, so all of that is an education process for the community at large, it's voting on what's gonna happen, right? So you need to do that. So what we're looking to do is work with you guys to say, let's work together to get the matrix filled out for both of us. If there's more information, you wanna take a look at our matrix and say, oh, there's stuff that I want more, then we can work on that. But I think we can all work together to bang on the matrix. And then when we have that major chunk of the committee's mission done, and then we can get into the other details. You can take it back to your school board, we can take it to our school board and say, all right, we've done this part, here's what we recommend, and go from there. So our ideas were, that's the premise of the whole thing, is why we put it out to a committee, why we wanted community members involved, is because we really wanted to hear everybody. Like, the more people that got involved, the more people that would be educated across the community is what's going on. But that's not really working out very well right now. So, we're gonna go to Plan B, which is to work with you guys hopefully and get out the matrix. Still have an educational forum, not necessarily a listening post, Charlene, right? So more of a feeding information out to the community at large and hearing what they have to say, but educating people on what's going on. I would like to think that would happen, and then going from there. So if that's something that sounds engaging to you guys, it would be lovely for us to say that we could work together. Yeah, so,
I think, Shad, you brought up, I just want to be clear, there's a difference, I think, and we need to define this when we have these conversations between vouchers and school choice. Because there are districts who, like Bartlett, you have to have a school of record, right? So let's say you work out a deal with Conway and you say, hey, we're gonna send our students to, but we're gonna offer this choice to our parents to also go to Freiburg Academy. And that may be something that you want to do. And then you'd have to kind of come to some agreement as to what you would pay. Maybe you pay the highest tuition of the two schools, and you offer that, and if it comes in less, then it's less. You just have to be careful regarding special education. You can't say, no, special ed kids, you have to go here and not there. But that's a little bit different than a voucher. Right now in New Hampshire, if you were to say, a voucher, okay, Erica, here's $20,000, educate your child however you choose to do that. That's not something that is backed or in law at this point.
Isn't it 5,500?
Yeah, that's the education freedom account. Yeah, it's around $5,500. And people can use that to homeschool and buy, they can use it to send their kids to whatever school that they choose to. And Robert Frost Charter School is a public charter school. So, it would not cost the residents, well, you pay your taxes, right? You pay into the state. But you would not be paying your direct taxes to the Robert Frost Charter School unless there are special education services, and then the town is obligated to pay for those.
Again, like I said, we all work together and get the info and hammer out the matrix, but at the end of the day, you guys have options, have fewer kids, you can say school of choice, school of choice, school of choice, whatever you want to do. I think we did our plan and get the survey back with, what do we got, 150, something like that, responses, and they have all the data on where do people want to go for high school, would you stay, would you go, would you do this, would you do that. Now, with the numbers and surveys we get back, that's, you can take information and kind of absorb it.
Mm-hmm.
One question I'd like to throw in here
Yeah.
is, last meeting, Lloyd Jones, Lloyd Jones piped up, said, well, geez, we've lost 100 kids in the last 10 years and this, or 200 kids. Would you ever consider having a high school with Jackson and Bartlett? We didn't say anything, but I personally, because remember back in the day with the co-op thing, Jackson said no right away, so no one got to vote on that, that doesn't matter. I personally would want to have Rockland Jackson, because when we don't have the space, we have to do more building, more staff, more science, more this, more that. And do you really want, do everyone want to be above from K through 12? And how do we do sports? How do
Right,
we
and
do
we'd have to
How
go,
do we do
it's
that?
just too much. I
So,
think
can we
it's
take
cost
that off?
effective. Yeah, that's not on the table.
That's off the table.
That's not, yeah, we wouldn't consider it, you know, when I was at your
Would
board,
you? No, okay.
board meeting or whatever, it was at least a year ago, nice weather was there was, you know, discussion, you don't have enough kids for teams,
Right,
and, you know,
right.
these kids aren't getting, you know, and it's just a,
Right. It
Numbers.
doesn't sound
So-
cost, it
so
doesn't sound cost effective
done.
or socially,
yeah.
Perfect.
yeah, so that's all.
I don't think for the best,
We just wanna fill
One
out
there.
our form together
Yeah.
and have a good, healthy discussions, like, you know, like, oh, this, you know, what did you find, you know, all that is valuable to me. And then go back to our respective boards, because you're right, your data is gonna help solve other issues that our data might solve. You know, it'll be the same data, but
Same
we're looking
data.
at it through different eyes.
Right.
So we all have to collect the same
Mhm.
information, as far as I'm concerned, you know, do they have sports, and do they have AP classes, and do they, you know, all those things. And do they even want, you know, basic things, and then from there, we can go back and to each place and say, here's what we found. And then you can take, so I'm looking at this, combining our efforts for at least like 3/4 of the committee mission, and then we go back and figure out what we need to project. Does that make sense to you?
it does.
And yes, just to reiterate, yeah, the high school options committee, we were never looking at Jackson Bartlett or, you know,
Yeah,
something.
it just came up, I want to make sure it's dead. And-
Yeah, no, we weren't.
Yeah, good, I didn't think so.
No offense.
No, but just, I'm trying to check, just.
No, you know, and people in the community will say that, have you ever thought about combining the two?
Yes, and the answer is no.
So, darling, where are we with the matrix? Like, where are
Well,
our
so
goals?
Sasha's recommendation is not to use the matrix. You know, Kevin, you're a Google person, so you're probably not the best to answer that, but she suggests making a Word document and then just having the categories.
Whatever, like the information.
So
from
the information from the matrix, so we have nothing on our matrix for Kennett. Right now, there's nothing on there for Gorham, because I played around today, tried to take it off, but I have it.
She erased it.
I was trying to cut and paste, and I cut, and I can't paste.
And am I correct that Sasha provided the information for Gorham, that she did the research on Gorham?
Correct,
Okay,
so I have it.
so, but she just presented it in a different format.
No, she's suggesting not using the matrix
Okay.
going forward. So her suggestion is,
A narrative, she was, or a separate document for each school is?
right, the second document for each school. She's just,
But
she was
using
going
all the
to,
questions from the matrix.
yes,
Okay.
using she said, I don't think Excel is ideal for capturing this much narrative. I would recommend a one-page summary, Word doc per school that's laid out in narrative form, that's me. She said, I'm happy to create one. I did ask her, but I'm not confident that she's gonna be able to give that to me. But I can certainly create something myself. That wouldn't take me long at all. So
So
basically,
we're
we're
using-
looking at,
It's just a
academics, AP classes, the SHOP, career tech. And I didn't double check to see the athletics, but Dr. Blazer was going to be looking at all the athletics, so I'm not sure where.
Yeah, the categories you had, personalization learning, health and wellness and safety, academics, college prep, career prep, teachers, examples of ratios,
Ratio, teacher.
support staff, administration, clubs, activities, sports, diversity, retention rates, facilities, community partnership, communication, alumni, costs.
Yeah, so some of that stuff are taken out. And I think,
So let's share our matrix. I
yeah,
think the best thing to do is, I always like to offer people, like, if there's an area that you have a preference for, that you find that's interest to you, like, claim it, as that you're gonna find out that information, like myself included. And we'll stake a claim, like, in the next week, we'll share it with you, look it over, say, I like this, I like that, and let's just get it done.
so then the other thing that Sasha brought up was, she does research. So she said everyone does the same thing. We speak to an educator, the principal or superintendent from each school, or version of the same. or agree on a handful of online resources. So, but basically, I would think if you say where you bought the source, where you got your information, that's, so her point was that Jackson, people, parents, people are going to be saying, you know, where'd you get that information? How do you know that that's not true? And she's saying you need to be able to go back and cite it and be able to say this information came from here. And that we use consistent types of information.
So that's the only.
You know,
But
but
talk
like,
to the neighbor, talk to the school itself, and then say who it is, and that makes sense.
yeah,
You know, and I'm okay if the schools have, like, we have an SAU 9 report card. I'm not sure if Gorham has a similar one, you know, so there's much.
she's got a lot of, and
Yeah.
Freiburg was great. I mean, I brought the stuff that I had from Freiburg. You know, you can go on, you know, and I spoke to Manning, what's his name?
Sure.
Yeah, he was really very nice, very, you know, going over, you know, they have all kinds of, you know, literature, the handbook, you know, the
So,
classes they have.
Kevin, may I circle back? I have a question. You talked about voucher being different from having, a choice, a school choice. And there's also school of record. So can you have a school of record and also have school choice?
Yes.
And is that something that is negotiated, like a certain percentage of students,
It-
or
it-
can it be?
So, the school of record has to take all of your students, right? They do. They do.
They're obligated to take as many as?
Yeah, as many as you want to send,
Okay,
right? But it doesn't have to be all.
okay.
That's in the current contract right now, it says you have to have
95%.
95 is 95%. That was 20 years ago, there were hardly any choices. But let's say that Bartlett had an agreement with Conway and says, we don't want to send all of our students, but we want to send any student who wants to go to Kent.
Mhm.
Great. And then you could send them to Freiburg. Where it really hasn't been tested yet is, and I suppose it would be on the receiving school. So if I'm an identified student who has specific needs, I want to go to Freiburg. Freiburg says, we really don't have the ability to support this child. What happens then?
Mhm.
Is it discriminatory, right? So where Conway, unless it was an out-of-district placement student, right, where they can't be educated in a public school setting, and there are some students who can't, that's where the rub would have to come in. And I'm not sure, I don't know enough about that type of arrangement. Probably wouldn't come up, but it will eventually at some point.
Yeah, and the two-state thing too, wouldn't that be a factor?
No,
Not really?
SAU 9, we have Chatham, New Hampshire. And Chatham is part of, I go to the Chatham School Board meetings. We do tuition agreements with Chatham in Freiburg, in Chatham in MSAD 72.
Okay, okay.
So they're elementary K through 8 go to,
But
they
it's,
have a good working relationship with the superintendent and Aaron Mayo over at Freiburg. We meet several times a year to go over things. Pam Stimson works with folks in Freiburg
okay,
for special education students in Chatham. We work, Jim Hill does the transportation contracts for Chatham.
okay.
It's just the funding is kind of funky
Mm.
because, for example, here's one, Maine continued to pay free lunches for every student in the state of Maine. Maine and New Hampshire don't operate the same. Their per pupil cost, if you were to go on the state website, much lower comparatively. Where if it were New Hampshire, because they calculate it out differently. So it's not really an apples to apples way of doing business. But Chatham's been there for, I don't know, 80 years probably.
And how many, they have less kids in Jackson? Like 10, maybe?
Chatham, no, believe it or not, they have
15 members?
about 50, 55.
55 kids? Oh, K, all the way.
K-12. Yeah.
Oh,
I think
okay.
somewhere around there.
Okay, okay.
I think they have like 30 at the K through 8,
Oh, it's fine.
24.
Yeah,
And occasionally, you know, Chatham students, I get phone calls, can we go to Canton High School because of whatever interest, sports or career tech, and we say,
Mhm.
because Conway has that policy in place right now, where if you are not part of the tuition agreement, you pay the highest rate of any town. So some years it's Jackson, some years it's Eaton, some years it's different places. But what Conway did back then was say, hey, look, Bartlett's paying for the construction of the school, they're paying for the renovations, the Career Tech Center, Jackson, everybody's paying for these other pieces. So we can't take and subsidize these outside towns. My advice to Conway is they need to jump in the game. It's a nice partnership to have with Freiburg because there's a population of students. If we have open seats in the Career Tech Center, we're 7 miles away.
Yeah.
Where right now, if a kid wants to take career tech classes at Freiburg Academy, they have to go 45 minutes one way, take their class, come back 45 minutes. So, you know, Senator Shaheen was here today, meeting with the kids doing the NASA stuff. We had a lot of kids, well, Joan Heiser, her son's an engineer, took AP classes, took the machine tool classes, made it a real nice fit. Hard to do that when you're geographically, but the point is, Conway's gonna be a little bit more flexible too, to say, hey, we may want to take some of these students and tuition in from other places.
Scott?
So just not to get outside the box here, but as far as negotiations with whatever school, first we have to deal with Kent or Conway. So there's 3 pieces to it. There's tuition you pay, the longevity of the agreement, and percentage of the kids that go there. So that's all part of negotiation. The more,
And that's nothing to do with this committee.
no, it doesn't, but the more information we all have,
Correct.
we go to negotiate with Conway, we say, this is because they need to realize that, oh geez, you could very easily send your kids to private, or Gorham, in a heartbeat, boom, they're gone. They say, oh, we don't care, it's 20 kids. Oh, all of a sudden, private, there's 70 kids, that's, 14, 15, 20% of the population right there.
It's always good to be well educated when you go into a negotiation.
Correct, and I just want to make sure everyone knows those 3 pieces to it, because no matter what we do, we're going to have to answer those questions, or answer those questions whenever we negotiate, either as a group, or as an individual town, or whatever it is.
And that's our responsibility for the community.
Right.
That's why we're finding out this information, so that, you know, we're speaking as one and going to the table.
And I think that would be a fair question to ask the other towns too, because, you know, as you said, you
January 31st.
get this many students, you have this many students, Albany, Eaton, Madison, Freedom, all these different towns. Is Gorham going to sign up to take 100 new students to their high school? Let's just say.
Right.
Well, that means they have to hire a whole lot more staff, they have to do, you know, some economy of scale there. Are they gonna do that on an annual basis? Maybe not. Is it 3, is it 5? Because they want to make sure that they aren't having to hire people and then lay people off in 2 years.
Right,
Because
that's
then
the agreement, 3, 5, 10.
they'll never get, you know, staff members to go there if they know that you get hired, and at least I would, if I were a superintendent. I'd be looking at a minimum of 5 anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's interesting way to look at it.
But Freiburg right now would have the space, because they said they would do it, right?
Yeah, they were interested in doing that.
But, now, Bartlett would say, can we send our 70 kids there? Or 50 kids, or whatever it is. Then, now all of a sudden, you've got 50,
Right.
60.
And they have the same issue too, that now they've got a staffing and, you know.
They'd probably take 100 students.
Yeah.
I mean, they've probably lost students as well.
Probably over the last,
If
yeah.
Kennett was to say, you know, somebody came to Kennett and said, would you take another 200? Of course we could, because we had
Sure.
200
Right.
before, I mean, just a few years ago.
It's easy enough to track, to look at the enrollment from, 3-4 years ago to,
Right.
you know, I think there's fewer foreign students coming to Freiburg because of the COVID thing, they had less. That's been my impression from stuff I'd
And,
seen.
and off the subject, what's picked up down there is a ski team with the academy. they got like 20 kids there, and I was more than ever there when I was coaching back in the 90s. So when we talk about having a middle school, at Kent having a ski academy, it's kind of starting to happen over there.
Absolutely.
And people have the money, they're coming, it's starting to grow. And if they did the right thing down there and went in the right direction, they could really explode 50, 60, 70 kids. It could be Green Mountain Valley School, it could be CBA, it could be lots of those things, but it's off the.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, good, well, I'm glad we're gonna work together, that makes me happy. I think we all have vested interest, we're obligated to do it, so I feel like we're in the right direction. Do you feel?
So what are we doing now?
So I think we'll share the questions from the
We'll
matrix.
share the questions.
You guys, I'll have to look at it too, you look at it and see wherever there's holes, and
Let's
say,
say we
I'll
give
do
them
that.
all.
Yeah, but it probably has got some filled in since hopefully, I know for sure that Kennett's empty as of this morning, so,
Yeah. So we need to,
but yeah, it's what I
pictures
said.
and get it done. So if we could send it out, and then if you guys could take a week to look it over and say, hey, I'm gonna tackle this and this, and then I'll do the same, and then we'll figure it out.
I would
from
take it
there.
off that matrix and simplify it a little bit.
John, do you wanna see if somebody in the SAU office can help with that? Taking it off the matrix and putting it into like a Word doc or something? So you don't have to try
They're a little busy, aren't they?
I'm fine.
I mean,
It's just, I think it's just a matter of giving a,
it's just getting information, I
I'm
think.
fine, I'm good. I think I'm good. I'll talk.
Put it this way, we're a support. We're a support for you guys, we're a support for all these folks. So if there are things that you need, and you say, give us a little advance notice, right? I mean, that's what we deal with all the time, so. If you want per pupil
Long as I
cost
get
for the
it-
entire state of New
Not
Hampshire.
filling it out, I mean, just
You
taking
wanna know
the
the-
mechanics of it.
Yeah,
As long as I get a
You guys
song,
yeah.
Yeah, but that's the beauty, the per pupil cost is not, I mean, we're already up here.
Right.
So no matter what we do, because finances are out the window.
You guys
It's not
are
getting there.
in the top 10, you're in the top 10. Madison's in the top 10.
So if
Three
you-
of you guys, we're 31 a year?
Now, you guys are actually ahead of these guys now.
I know, we're like 31, right? And you guys like 29?
28 or 29.
29, I think I said.
65 here. All that money from Jacksonville is down to Bartlett.
Yep. No, thank you guys so much, I think
We
this would be
appreciate it.
a good, and it's good to work together anyway.
Yeah, and so that you don't have to duplicate, I
Right.
told you that months ago, silly for you guys are doing your strategic plan and, to do the same work.
It's interesting, I mean, the Robert Frost, I get,
Is that
they're,
the same as Woodland Pines?
it's new, they're trying it out, they're trying to get there. If all of a sudden there's a bunch of kids there, and then we're
It seems to be picking up.
I personally think Bartlett parents might really want to do that, but since it's so new, they might put the brakes on and say, well, they're not new enough. Whereas Firebird established, they've been there longer, they've been there, what, 200 some years or
What I found interesting was the article about Woodlands last week with the testing, where they said how poorly they had done the Woodlands Charter School compared to in the state of
But-
New Hampshire. But then they went on to describe that not all the kids that take the test, that qualified to get your statistics in line, so.
That's every school in the state of New Hampshire.
Yes.
See, that's why you gotta be careful of that. So
Yeah.
even about,
Right,
you have 100 kids in the school,
Yeah.
and only 80 take the
take the
test.
test, so now you're,
Then 15 students go into zeros.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the
What
problem.
was the other one?
That's what all the problems
The
are.
math scores, what was that, in today's paper, yesterday's
I
paper?
don't know.
Marvel had house with it today.
Was it today, it was about the high school math scores?
Yeah, but he was defending the charter school.
Right.
Because the kids didn't take the test.
Okay.
That was his main point, but then he started spewing theater out. But it doesn't,
It's not apples to apples.
No, it's not.
really tough.
No.
Unless you look at individual students, that's really what you have to take a look at.
all right, well, we'll send you that stuff.
So you feel good?
You
I
okay?
think I have more questions
Okay.
as we go along. I think, I'm interested in just learning about all of the schools and presenting all of that information and hearing from the community when the time is right. I did have one more question about because Robert Frost is the one that I'm responsible for researching, and public charter school is such a new concept to me, that I'm trying to understand what happens. So students can go there who don't live in the town of Conway, and they
Some,
don't pay tuition, or they do because they don't live within the town. Like, do you still have to live within the town?
so, if you are a resident of New Hampshire, you can go to any public charter school as long as there's enough room for it.
Okay,
So you'll see some have a lottery, right? So like Robert Frost Charter School, if they were to have 40 kids sign up for high school next year, they don't have a facility that could
Right.
take that.
John Ford.
So they may, it's true, it's true. If everybody leaves Conway, they can close the school.
Well, that's my point, when you
Yeah.
go to talk to Conway, I think they get it, I'm not gonna bash the school board, but
Yeah.
they don't get the big picture here.
Yeah. Well, I think they do. And I think some of them are saying, see, like, that's fine.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But,
And,
so get back to your point.
yeah,
So they would do a lottery, okay? So they actually, there's a process for doing the lottery. They do it on a certain day, and they assign numbers, and they either do the da-da-da, or somehow they do the lottery. And it doesn't have to be a Conway student, you're right. So right now, at these different schools, you have students that travel from Gorham, Berlin, maybe their parents work in town, so they drop their kids off at either Woodlands or Robert Frost. So as I said before, the town of residents is responsible for all additional costs. So they're responsible for transporting students or no transportation whatsoever, right? So if a bus happens to be driving by, students can get on the bus. So if a student from Bartlett, Jackson, wants to go to Woodlands Charter School, and the bus is going by there, then they can take the bus there. They're not gonna do special routes for them. And we've talked to them about that. There are certain routes that.
Who actually pays for the schooling?
You do.
Right. Okay, so it
Yeah.
comes out of our taxes.
It comes out of a statewide tax.
$2.40 bill that we pay.
That's part of it. You get some money from the liquor store, the lottery, or this, that, and there's also a statewide fund that's there. And there's hundreds of millions of dollars in there. So there are a number of different pieces that go into it. If a student from Maine wants to go to the public charter school, they have to pay tuition for it, if there's room. Here's the tricky part though, right? So, if Bartlett sends a student to the Robert Frost Charter School for high school,
right.
and they want to participate in sports, they can participate in sports. But if Bartlett isn't part of that agreement anymore, it's kind of what happens with you guys now. So if Bartlett sends students to Kennett Middle School in Conway for middle school sports, they pay a fee, $200 per student, $300, whatever it happens to be. So that's the other part. If you're in Conway and you're a charter school student, you can participate in anything that's not going to cost you anything.
That's fair.
So I answered the question. I feel a little better. And then the whole voucher thing was still
Yeah,
mind
that helps,
boggling to me.
that helps clarify. But then, so if it's a state-funded public charter school, a town would still have to pay tuition. Would a town still have to pay tuition to Robert Frost
Nope.
the way that they would to Kennett?
Nope.
They would
It's
just
public.
go there.
No.
A student from Jackson could go to Woodlands tomorrow, and the town of Jackson, the entity, would not have to pay anything for that,
Even at the high school level.
even at Robert Frost Charter School, correct?
And there'd be no tuition.
No, not for New Hampshire residents, if you're within the state of New Hampshire.
Pretty mind boggling, right?
So I didn't, yeah, I guess I hadn't
Unless there's special education
come to that
services that are
conclusion yet. And then special education services are still provided through SAU 9, correct?
Well,
Or-
through the town.
or
Through
augmented?
whatever town.
Whatever town, so
Jackson.
Jackson would be responsible
The sending town.
A, Right, wherever that kid is from.
So that could be an incurred, so if I'm wrong, if we send our students to Kennett and they need some service, right? So they need some help, there's an economy of scales there, because there'd be another student that might need, so we have like one full-time special teacher that would help several students. But now if we're sending that one student to the charter school, then we have to pay for that teacher to be there for that student.
Yes,
It's a
but-
one-on-one, you mean?
Oh, well, whatever, but they wouldn't be, there wouldn't necessarily be
You
another
get some
student.
speech services.
Oh, okay.
So specialized services are, you're gonna pay for those kind of regardless of where you are.
Okay.
So if Jackson has a hard of hearing student who goes to Kent High School, and they require either a teacher of the deaf or somebody like that, we don't have one of those on staff anywhere in any of the SA County schools. So, you know, Jackson would be paying specifically for those services in the IEP for a student at the charter school. Some costs are built in, as Jen said, specifically, you know, number of special education teachers at different levels.
Now, when we use that number of $31,000 per kid in Bartlett, you have to break that apart. We have transportation, but that includes special ed, that includes sports, that includes everything. So the state number is what, 5,500? What does the state pay Robert Frost? It's
Yeah, I think for about
$6,000.
maybe $6,000.
So that sounds really, really cheap, but in reality, it's cheap, but it's not. I mean, there's a lot of things that our towns pay for that they don't, and we would have to if they needed the services.
Right.
So, the voucher thing, is that like, are we done with that?
No, so
No,
the
we
voucher
haven't
thing we
said-
need to explore and make sure that we understand
The
and can
state voucher.
educate the town on it and answer questions on it. Because I don't know anything about it, but it's an option on the
But-
table. Like,
But any individual can go to the state and get a voucher.
But I think the difference is,
Which I'm a little-
there's a perception that there's a la carte. So there's only so Andrew wants to educate his kid, how many do you get, 4 or 5? Yeah, 4
Nine or
kids.
10 by now.
So he has 4 kids, and you're eligible for $20,000 per student. You can use however you choose to. That, I think, is a perception that's out there. Or can we do half and half? I want my child to go to Freiburg Academy for the music program in the morning and encourage that in the afternoon. I think those are some of the
these are some of the
conversations
questions that
for.
we have. And I know nothing about the voucher, or no, and how does it impact us as the rest, like if half our students go to the
That's
voucher,
where
what
it's
happens?
fun, we have to use it in the state, because as soon as you go to Freiburg for the music, the state vouchers are not gonna pay for that. Out of state.
Yeah, but I don't even think they're talking about state vouchers. I think they're talking about,
Yeah,
from what I've heard, is the Jackson School District offering their own vouchers.
Oh, okay, well,
to
that's a Jackson
the
School
public.
District.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Because the state's not gonna pay $20,000, right?
So vouchers for you meant you do the vouchers for the
So
families.
people think that
Gotcha.
that 30, is rounded off,
30, yeah.
30, take 20 of it. And they'll take, each of them will take 20 and,
Then you have some people move in here.
Right, and they'll be like, oh, well, homeschool, or, yeah, or whatever. So
So
we have to
when
figure
you
that out.
say
That's
explore-
not necessarily the case, that's,
voucher,
that's what I'm trying to understand.
That's what we need to
we
define.
need to define what a voucher is and what it would mean for Jackson.
Okay.
Yes?
And I don't know if there's like a voucher definition for everybody, but, like, that's.
Well, I think once we define it, we'll know exactly what it is.
But is there like a voucher for Chatham? Is there a voucher for, they don't have one at all?
They have the education freedom count, and I think people are getting.
That's different, that's confused, and that's okay to say, we don't have a voucher. You're
That's the
thinking of
50,
this.
that's the $6,000 one, you're talking about 20 grand to,
Yeah. now
But I
the
think that's
6 one
just
is
something
got
that's
lots of-
spinning around in like the stratosphere there, and it might just be an education process, say, we don't have a voucher, this is what you're talking about.
And then school choice gets confused as
School
well,
choice is
right?
different.
So
Right,
if you
so-
live in Barnstead, New Hampshire,
Mhm.
you can go to Co-Brown, Northwood, or Dover,
mhm.
right? dollars, and I think if it goes beyond, you're responsible for that out of your pocket.
Could I make a suggestion here pretty soon, next week or two?
Yeah.
We kind of get more answers to these questions. Send a newsletter home, Bartlett and Jack saying, FYI, here's what this means.
Well, this is the point, like, this is what we're, the listening post and educational forum, once we know, like, we have a vocabulary list on the
But
matrix.
preempt them, send info
Right.
out ahead so they
Yes,
can.
but we have to understand it too, because when I get stopped at the post office.
Basically, there's three different scenarios you could have, quote, voucher, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah, we started to, you did those definitions, and I'll look at those.
Yeah, so we need to figure out, like, the definition side. I'm just coming on officially to this as well, so.
Your
Yeah.
initial?
No. And then, so figuring out the vocabulary as well, you know, just so that we can have these conversations, which is gonna happen in grants, right? And wherever else, what does this mean and blah, blah, blah. So that we all know, and I wanna have it down, like, what does it really mean? So that we're all on the same page. So that's my key idea. I wanna make sure we do this process correctly for this community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, appreciate it very much.
We're missing your husband up on the hill. How slop bad makes it.
How you doing, Hank?
Yeah? Okay. Yeah, he's a little under. He'll be out though.
They'll take care of it, if they're stuck on the town, half of the outside.
I'm sure he'll be out the next day or so.
Good.
Yeah.
Looking forward to
All
it.
right, tell him I said hi.
I will do that.
We have an extra seat, so you can sit over next to me.
See you Saturday. I'm reading Saturday.
Okay, no, me either.
James said, trying to catch you earlier.
8:54.
Susan said, you're down in the basement with Jerry.
What's that?
I'm sure we have, Saturday or Sunday.
Oh, really?
Never know.
He gave you an opportunity.
See you about that.
Yeah.
Okay.